Yeah.
I think, again, that's an intellectual's view. I mean, I find I do it all the time, naturally. You know, I don't even know how I'm going to talk this afternoon because the material I have shown elsewhere. But what I will say about it will probably be different. Because the last time I showed the material was in Los Angeles at SCIARC. It's more or less the same lecture, I have to admit. But here I am in Madrid with a different audience. I'm being translated. In Los Angeles, in SCIARC, I have a lot of friends, and I know the school very well. And therefore I use a certain sort of shorthand that can be used by an Englishman in Los Angeles with a group of people that he knows the sniff of the room, you know. Now here it's much more difficult because it's lost in translation. There's certain humorous things, even though half the audience in Los Angeles might be from Asia or from Europe, you know, so SCIARC is a very international school. But nonetheless, there is a sort of common thread of humour. Even the guy introducing me, we kind of have a bit of a joking around, you know. And the questions then can be quite naughty, and the answers can be quite naughty. Now, as soon as I'm in a place where you have to be translated, perhaps in a school that's not 100% sure of itself, then you have to be more careful because people get much more easily upset and nervous, and the fine line between trivialness, trivia, and seriousness, which you can play in amongst friends or in amongst a place that has a very sophisticated milieu, is cut away from you. You have to be rather simple and direct. And I'm not giving you a very polite answer. I'm giving you already a circuitous answer, which layers my own kind of academic cynicism, which is that I think that I can remember a long, long time ago being invited to the Friday evening soirees of a very famous critic called Rayner Bannon before he went to America. I was the youngest person allowed in the door to these soirees. And I started hearing conversations that I'd never heard as a student. And they weren't just about architecture, they were about gossip and about this and about that. And a lot of the names being bandied about I hadn't heard of, and there was a lot of... And you had to work at it. You went there and you tried to memorize what was being said, and then you might... Nowadays you'd go to Google and Google it up. And now at that time, who is it? You'd ask somebody, who's so-and-so, so-and-so. And you had to work at it. You had to push your brain to expand to it. And I think one part of me believes that a good student should be forced to do that. It's rather like drawing a difficult corner by hand. You have to fight your way around the corner of the building. Another half of me says, but you know, a lot of architectural discourse is obscure. And there was a movement, there was a group of people, maybe they're still around in the corners of American academia, who enjoy obscure referencing, and only if you've read Deleuze and Guattari do you meant to understand what the fuck they're on about. And I hate that. I mean, one half of me doesn't mind the obscurity coming in within the creative part of the discourse, but if it's just, have you read this book, have you read that book, have you read the next book, I have a great distaste for it. So I'm sort of, I swing both ways on that issue, you know. I think that when you know the student, when you know the group, if you're a good teacher, you drop the thing in at a point which is just a little bit ahead of where they are. Rather like, you know, fashion marketing presents in an advertisement or in a fashion article something which they can nearly afford but can't quite afford. If you make it untouchable, if you make it some clothing that the people reading the magazine, no way can they afford it. You're lost. If you make it just what they can see down the street, you're not flattering them with enough. If you make it something that they will aspire to and investigate, it's funny reducing architectural discourse to the level of fashion advertising, but there are similarities. I think cultures are the manipulation of culture is a very complex issue. And I think that, for example, when you were at the Bartlett, you were taught by Michel, who was from
Holland.
And then, some of the other people around were English, and then maybe some of the other people around were German, and then some of the other students were from here and there. And therefore, a statement made by somebody, or a criticism made by somebody, is seen against a series of mere misinterpretations or conditioners, where it isn't fact and it isn't fiction, but it is questionable fact. And I think questionable fact is a very interesting idea, that if one says, the light quality coming through from there onto that balcony borrows from a certain tradition but misses the point. And I might say something different if I was a Swede, and I might say something different if I was an Algerian, and I might say something different if I'd been sitting in this room every evening for a week and started to make, it's both right and wrong. But the interesting thing is where it's right and wrong. My wife, who was a student at Yale, not from England, from Tel Aviv actually, and had studied in another school, said when she came to the AA, and we would make all these comments about, we wouldn't say that something was good or something was bad. We might say, that's rather interesting. And she said, we wonder what you meant by interesting. And I said, that's exactly the point. We wanted to goad you into re-examining it. And actually it was interesting. Not necessarily good, because as soon as you say it's good, the student lays back and doesn't do anything. As soon as you say it's bad, the conversation's over. The tease. The tease is to say, interesting, tell me more. Tell me more, tell me more. Have another look. Let's have a look at that balcony from another direction. Yeah. The ley light is playing a game with the glass above it. That's interesting. And you look at it again, and you look at it again, and you look at it again. And for me, that's what's interesting about design, is that there isn't a pure view. Okay, some people are obviously incompetent, and some people are obviously interesting, but within that, there are layers and layers and layers and layers.